Here are the top 10 reasons why the Thrawn Trilogy are better sequels than the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. I absolutely adore the Thrawn Trilogy. I think that they are just really great books. So without further ado, here we go. So number 10 is the ending of Return of the Jedi is still intact. The Thrawn trilogy does not rob the ending scene of Return of the Jedi, meaning Zahn continues the story with respect that it deserves. We witness the New Republic grow and develop instead of it being destroyed. The sequel trilogy undoes the ending of Return of the Jedi by destroying the Resistance almost completely in The Last Jedi. Palpatine's return is completely mishandled, in my opinion. It is barely explained, and it ruins the ending of Return of the Jedi. I don't like that everything goes to shit in the sequel trilogy because it makes the ending of Return of the Jedi kind of meaningless. And it's like the perfect ending. It just makes you happy. The ending of Return of the Jedi is perfect. And you don't really need any more because the sequel trilogy kind of really messes all up. But Zahn doesn't do that. He is an excellent writer and he continues the legacy of Star Wars incredibly well. Number 9 is a satisfying conclusion. The three books end in one explosive climax and offer amazing resolutions for these characters, unlike in the sequel trilogy. Luke, Han, and Leia and Lando have a great ending at the end of Last Command, as well as Thrawn, Mara Jade, Jorah C'baoth, and Talon Karrde. The ending here is much better than the ending of Rise of Skywalker, which is just god awful in my opinion. It is really bad. The Rise of Skywalker is by far the worst Star Wars movie just because it makes no sense. The entire film makes no sense. It raises more questions than it answers, which is not the case with the original Thrawn trilogy. And the story is much better told in Zahn's three-book saga. It really is. It's just an exceptional, well-told story, in my opinion. Number 8 is a true continuation of the original trilogy. The books feel like a natural next chapter after Return of the Jedi. They feel like the natural progression of the story and not a retread, which is what the sequels feel like, unfortunately. The goal with these books was to make an expansive story as big as the original three films, and in this, Zahn succeeded, in my opinion. The sequels feel like a reset, they feel like a soft reboot, and the sequel trilogy characters are the new characters. And Zahn doesn't make this mistake. He puts the original trilogy characters as the main heroes. And I think that it works much better than seeing new characters in the forefront in The Force Awakens. I think that the Thrawn trilogy is just a much better story overall, and it pays respect to the original trilogy as well as our heroes, our beloved heroes, Luke, Han, and Leia, and Lando. Number 7 is just enough nostalgia. The Force Awakens has been criticized for having way too much nostalgia. Starkiller Base is the main reason for this, as it basically is a third Death Star. And in the Thrawn trilogy, there is no such thing. There are no super weapon, and I think that it really benefits this trilogy. Like, you can tell that they were just redoing the same story beats in the sequel trilogy, and it hurt the trilogy overall because the Starkiller Base is never explained. You don't know how the First Order got to this point, and it is just lazy writing. But in the Thrawn trilogy, you have the Katana fleet, which is this massive fleet of dreadnoughts that has been lost for like 50 years, and they somehow find it. And it is just an excellent story thread, and I think that Zahn does a much better job here of handling the nostalgia in the sequel books than J.J. Abrams does in The Force Awakens. And he is fantastic, and he really does the nostalgia well. He does a few callbacks to the original trilogy, of course, but I think that they are well handled and they are well done and few and far between. Number 6 is a great cast of new characters. Characters like Thrawn, Jorah C'baoth, Mara Jade and Taylor Card are layered, memorable, and integral to the plot. They are much better than the sequel trilogy characters, the new ones. I think that Rey is a compelling character at first, but she is mishandled and her story goes absolutely nowhere. Just like Finn, who starts out as a stormtrooper, and you kind of think that he's force sensitive in The Force Awakens, but his story goes nowhere either, and The Rise of Skywalker just doesn't really give them any satisfying conclusions at all. And I think that that's the one of the main reasons why people don't care about the sequel trilogies, because the writers really mishandled the characters. Number five is Zahn writes and knows Star Wars incredibly well. Zahn keeps a steady tone and theme throughout the trilogy. He develops the New Republic super well and delves deeper into the cosmic force. He also knows all of our heroes on deep level and portrays Luke Skywalker much better than in the films. Higher to the Empire begins the trilogy in a spectacular fashion, and Dark Force Rising is the Empire Strikes Back of the three books, and The Last Command closes out the trilogy in an incredible way. The sequel trilogy is just a giant mess. The Force Awakens starts off the story pretty well, but not much is explained. The state of galaxy is kind of up in the air, and you are kind of sort of lost. It's a story that's poorly told but entertaining. And then The Last Jedi is very different. The tone completely shifts from J.J. Abrams to Rian Johnson. And then The Rise of Skywalker is just one big mess. It raises more questions than it answers. And Zahn doesn't do this. Zahn has a cohesive storyline from start to finish, and he writes Star Wars really well. Number four is strong world building. The Thrawn Trilogy expands the galaxy with new ideas like Issa Marai, the Chiss, and new worlds like Coruscant and Jomark are explored. The New Republic plays a huge role in the story, and the politics are incredibly important here. The sequel trilogy really mishandles the world building, and it has no politics, and it barely has any moments with the New Republic, and then that gets just destroyed in like the second act of the movie. It is really just awful the way they handled the world building here. I don't like the way J.J. Abrams set up this new galaxy in this 30 years later story. It's a story that's poorly told. Zahn has great world building in his books compared to the sequel trilogy. Number three is respect for the original characters. Characters like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Leia Organa, and Lando evolve naturally in Zahn's story, and they have really strong character arcs. In the sequels, many fans feel like their arcs were undone or mishandled, especially Luke's portrayal. I enjoyed Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi, but I completely understand if you did not. And I much prefer his portrayal in the Legends books. I think that it's much closer to the original Luke that we all know and love. And I feel like he was mishandled by Rian Johnson. And I know Mark Hamill has stated this numerous times in interviews that he really disagreed with Rian Johnson. He doesn't hate the Last Jedi, but he disagreed with what he did with Luke, and I completely get it. Number two is better villains. Grand Admiral Thrawn stands out as a strategic genius and a much better villain than Snoke ever was in the sequel trilogy. He is an incredibly memorable villain and remains one of the franchise's best antagonists ever since he was first introduced in Higher to the Empire. And Joris Sibaoth is actually a pretty compelling villain as well. He's a dark side user. He's a clone who's gone insane, and he wants to turn Luke Skywalker into the dark side. He wants to control Luke Skywalker. And while Mara Jade was once the Emperor's hand, and she has a vendetta against Luke Skywalker for destroying the Emperor. She later becomes his wife in the future novels, and she is a very interesting character. Adam Driver portrays Kylo Ren really well. I think that he was mishandled like most of the new characters in the sequel trilogy, and I don't like Snoke as a character because his story goes nowhere. It's a cool twist that they killed him off in The Last Jedi. I was shocked when that first happened, but in hindsight, that was a mistake. It was a mistake to kill him off. They should have kept him alive, and we know nothing about Snoke, and that's why he's not interesting. It's because he has no backstory, and we had huge expectations with Snoke, unlike Palpatine, which I understand that he had no backstory in Return of the Jedi, but we had no expectations with him. And Snoke is a different story. It's a different beast altogether. With Snoke, we had expectations going into The Force Awakens. And so, yeah, Snoke was mishandled. Kylo Ren was mishandled by the end of The Rise of Skywalker. And I think that they were just really kind of laughable when everything was all said and done. The number one reason why the original Thrawn trilogy is better than the sequel trilogy is this: a clear, cohesive plan. The Thrawn trilogy was written by one person, and Zahn had a clear idea of where all three books were going, and I think that helps the trilogy immensely. The sequel trilogy had no plan. They did The Force Awakens, and they just had the first movie planned out, and this really bit them in the ass. One person should have done all three. I think that one person should have handled all three movies, or at least you get a director for each installment, but you at least have the story mapped out. But they didn't even plan ahead, and I think that it really ruined the sequel trilogy, unfortunately, because everybody was mostly excited at the beginning. Like, if you go back to 2015 and you watch all of the trailers and the trailer reactions for The Force Awakens, it was insane. Everybody was excited, but they did not deliver. Disney did not deliver with the sequel trilogy. But Zahn really wrote a great saga. Harry to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command, in my opinion, are the true sequel trilogy. And I think a lot of people agree with me when I say that. So let me know if you agree or disagree with me on this. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. Those are my top 10 reasons why I think the Higher to the Empire trilogy are much better sequels than the sequel trilogy ever was. Please like, comment, subscribe, and see you next time.